Selling more cars starts with reaching shoppers who are ready to take the next step. That's why dealers turn to AutoTrader, where leads deliver a 69% higher close rate. Visit dealdoers.com to learn more.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the fourth week of August 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. This week on the show, Ford is planning a Bronco pickup, a four-door Mustang, and even a luxury spinoff for Lincoln. Carvana is charging thousands more for new vehicles than dealers down the street, and customers keep buying. And BMW thought pushing a Spider-Man movie ad onto owners' dashboards would go over fine. It did not. Joining me today is Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us at Automotive News. Mike, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Kel.
And Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru for us at Automotive News. Larry Legend, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Cal. Good to see you and Mike again.
All right, gentlemen. So let's start with the big Ford product story this week. Mike, let's start with the Bronco pickup. What does it mean strategically that Ford is essentially dedicating an entire plant to the Bronco sub-brand?
Well, it means that they're continuing what CEO Jim Farley has promised, that he's going to build the company around these iconic pillars: Bronco, Mustang, F-Series, even Maverick. So we're seeing them move from having a 2- and 4-door Bronco SUV, plus the Bronco Sport, the crossover, to now having a pickup. We're reporting that's coming at the end of the decade, and going to have a Lincoln version of a Bronco off-roader as well. So they see opportunity both in the premium end to get a little more margin out of off-roaders and to offer what Jeep had in the Gladiator, a pickup version. Because if we know anything about Ford, they love pickups. They love selling pickups. They love those type of customers. So they're going to try to stretch the boundary of what they offer in a pickup to have that Bronco badge on it as well.
What'll be really interesting about this is to see if they make the same mistake that Jeep made with the Gladiator, right? They made an off-road pickup, great, but the problem was that the wheelbase was too long. They made a long wheelbase, which was great as a pickup, but as an off-roader, it high-centered all the time. And that made, that was kind of a big issue. You would go over bumps or, crest, you'd have what's called a breakover angle. And on the Gladiator, it was really bad. You'd end up, high centered on that vehicle because the wheelbase was too long. I'll be really curious to see if Ford makes that same error.
And Larry, I can tell you, based off some reporting I've done over the prior years, Ford they planned to do a Bronco pickup earlier, after it was introduced. I think it was, if I remember right, it was originally supposed to debut by 2024. And according to some private conversations between dealers and some very, very senior executives, they were telling them, because the dealers expressed those concerns, saying, hey, look at Gladiator isn't setting the world on fire. There's these sort of issues with its design. And those senior executives were reassuring the dealers and telling them, just wait till ours comes out. It's going to have essentially better proportions. So those plans were canceled, but now we have the plans back on. I would have to imagine that Ford learned from Jeep's mistakes there. But Kelly, I did want to bring up another factor here, because you referenced an entire plant for Bronco. I'm reporting that's going to be Michigan assembly plant, but right now that builds the Ranger. So what I find fascinating is what Ford will ultimately do with the Ranger. I have some reporting that there's a mid-size-ish pickup slated to go in Blue Oval City in Tennessee around the same time, end of the decade timeframe, which Ford could choose to just make that the next generation Ranger. They do build it in multiple countries around the world, including South America. Maybe if trade tensions die down by the end of the decade, you could see them import a next generation Ranger, or they could just get rid of it altogether. They've gotten rid of Ranger in the US in the past, but it is such an important global vehicle for them. I'm not really sure. If I'm placing bets, I would say the most likely outcome is that Tennessee truck gets the Ranger name. That's the reporting I have so far. But obviously, as with any future product, Larry knows It's all subject to change.
Yeah. Mike, are they, I'm just curious here. Are they talking about, they're still making the Amarok for Volkswagen, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
But just right now
it's the Ranger. It's a rebadged Ranger, but that they make.
Right.
And the Amarok is Volkswagen's pickup overseas, which they're not allowed to have in the U.S. So,
but as of right now, by forgive me, I'm forgetting the exact year, if it's 29 or 30, there is currently no program code for a next generation Ranger in Michigan assembly.
Wow.
Interesting stuff. Well, let's move on to the four-door Mustang. Now, Ford showed this to dealers this summer. What was the reaction? And is this a sign of what turning a nameplate into a sub-brand actually looks like in practice?
Yeah, Kel, I'd say the reaction was very positive. Although, to be fair, Ford has been showing this to dealers for 2 years now. This most recent meeting, they showed them a physical prototype. They drove it on stage. They had it on stage, from what I was told. And all the dealers that I spoke with really loved it. They described it as like a Porsche Panamera. Ford told them that it would have more second row room than a Panamera. Dealers described it in terms of design, obviously not price. They're not going up against Porsche in that segment in that regard. But they described it like a Panamera in terms of its silhouette, sort of a curved back door, sort of tapering off. One dealer even told me almost sort of kind of like an Audi e-tron, just in terms of a very wide, low stance. Everybody said it was beautiful. Everybody said they can't wait to sell it. So you referenced it. This is Ford's theory in practice. They want Mustang to be such a range of products that no matter what you're looking for in that space, you'll be able to find it. If you want really cheap, if you want something to take onto the track, anything in between, they'll have it for you.
Do you know, Mike, what engine they're going to put in this four-door Mustang?
I don't have that level of detail, but what I can tell you is they were telling dealers it would start under $40,000. So if it is a V8, that would be interesting, because I believe the two-door V8 Mustang starts over $40,000. So does that mean it would get an EcoBoost as a sort of base level option?
That's my bet.
Maybe.
EcoBoost is what I'm thinking.
It seems logical, but again, I don't have any firm reporting on the engines or how many that four-door will get.
Interesting stuff. Now, Larry, you cover Japanese automakers, brands that have been very disciplined about product strategy. Now, when you see Ford going this direction, expanding ICE and hybrid families, scaling back EV ambitions, how does it compare with what other automakers are doing?
I think what they're doing is logical. They're still kind of recovering back from their EV bets a little bit. And you see these moves, this future product exercise that we do every year, which is really, I mean, it's very time, intensive. We all spend weeks on it. We talk to a lot of people to try and get some picture of what, the next 4 years looks like. And then, we put it out there and we hope that what we are saying is going to come to pass. Right. And it doesn't always. What it does is it especially as we go further out year to year, the opportunities for change come. But I think with that said, what Ford is doing here makes sense. They have some nameplates that are just, they're gold, and you want to stick with it. You want to take full advantage of it, of those nameplates. And so, you can't hardly fault them for that. I mean, Toyota does the same thing with Corolla, right? They now have the Corolla Cross. They have the GR Corolla. Those two vehicles bear only some resemblance to the original Corolla sedan, which still sells pretty well. And it leads its segment. I think this move by Ford to capitalize on Bronco is good, to capitalize on Mustang. And Mustang is, I think, because of the fan base that vehicle has, that's going to be a little tougher sell. If a four-door Mustang is not something that the enthusiast community is, I think, going to naturally embrace. And for those who can't tell, Kel is shaking his head right now in agreement.
We don't want it.
Yeah. They are taking some chances. It'll be very interesting to see how that lands.
Now, Mike, let's wrap up this Ford product conversation with Lincoln. 3 vehicles in the lineup. Dealers have been screaming for product. Does what you reported this week feel like a real turnaround plan for that brand?
Well, I don't know if you want to call it a turnaround plan as much as maybe expanding what Lincoln is. For a decade plus now, it's been that quiet flight theme, sort of understated elegance, really luxurious cabins, sort of a quiet, literally quiet ride in terms of NVH. And an off-roader based on the Bronco would not be that. To be fair, I'm sure it would be much quieter, much more refined than today's Bronco. We talked a few months ago about that Bronco Filson premium version, trying to take that up market. That sounds like it will be a more refined ride than the current vehicle today. So I would imagine the Lincoln version that we've reported is coming in 2029 will be even better. But it's something new for Lincoln. We also say there's an electric crossover, small crossover coming in 2029, I believe, that would essentially replace the Corsair. They need something in that small crossover segment. They've alluded to the fact Corsair is super important to them, even though they discontinued it in the US at the end of the year. So Lincoln's expanding into new territory here. Is this the sum of what the next steps will be? I don't know. I think the new president, the new head of design want to put their stamp on the brand in some way. And we'll see that moving forward. They also announced last week they're ending imports from China in 2030. There's a lot of time between now and then to maybe change their mind. If there's a new Democratic administration in the White House, who knows? But if that's the case, we assume they would be building the Nautilus in the United States after 2030. Or would they go with something else besides the Nautilus name? So there's opportunity here for Lincoln to sort of chart a new course a bit, for sure, with that Bronco and maybe some other products in the future.
Mike, I have a question. Did Ford kill the wrong brand?
That's a tough one. I would argue, if you want to say no, and I think I would make that argument, that Lincoln is still valuable, that having an American luxury brand to rival Cadillac from one of the Detroit Three is an important thing. And you look beyond the US, Lincoln is still very highly thought of in China. They view it as the car of presidents back when they had the presidential limos that folks would ride in, the president, that is. And it's thought of as an aspirational product, much in the same vein as Cadillac or some of the Japanese or European luxury brands. I think in the United States, it still has a customer base. That customer base has traditionally skewed older. They're trying to change that. The Navigator, the largest of those products, has the youngest customer base, and it seems to keep getting younger as the years go on. So I think it's an important space for Ford Motor Company to be in that luxury space. Now, again, you could argue top-end F-150, top-end Expedition are essentially luxury vehicles. And you can argue that the 3 products Lincoln sells in the U.S. today all have Ford counterparts. So why have them? But I don't know. I think just in terms of representing American luxury, quote unquote, you need more than just Cadillac.
And just for reference, I just looked it up. The last Lincoln built presidential limousine was in 1989.
Yeah, so that shows you that it's sort of aged, but it still ages well in those overseas.
But Lincoln customers remember that well.
Lincoln customers voted in that election. Coming up, Carvana is selling new cars for thousands more than traditional dealers and moving them faster. What does that say about where the franchise model stands? That's next on Daily Drive.
What if your next lead already knew exactly what they wanted? With AutoTrader's AI-powered shopping experience, today's car buyers get help from the very first search. They can describe what they're looking for in everyday language, compare vehicles, ask questions, explore budget and payment options, and move through the buying journey with more confidence. And while shoppers are getting a smarter, more personalized experience, dealers get something even more valuable: stronger signals of real intent. AutoTrader helps shoppers do more of the early legwork before they ever contact your store, researching, narrowing their options, and getting closer to a decision. So when that shopper reaches out or walks onto your lot, your team is not starting from scratch. You're connecting with someone who has already engaged, already explored, and is much more ready to buy. That is the power of AutoTrader. Our AI shopping tools help match shoppers to the right inventory faster, keep them moving through the process, and turn online interest into real sales opportunities dealers can act on with confidence. Because for dealers, success is not just about generating more leads. It's about getting the right shoppers, ready to buy shoppers, closer to the close. AutoTrader helps do some of the first selling for you, so your team can spend less time chasing cold leads and more time doing what they do best: closing deals. That means more meaningful conversations, more efficient follow-up, and more opportunities to move inventory faster. See how AutoTrader helps turn search into sold at dealdoers.com. That's dealdoers.com. AutoTrader. Always be selling.
Welcome back to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Michael Martinez and Larry Velaquette. Larry, a new analysis from Catalyst IQ requested by Automotive News found that Carvana priced several models well above local competitors over a 90-day period ending earlier this month, with the Ram 2500 advertised for more than $4,500 above area Stellantis stores on average. And yet, Carvana's turn rate across its 7 new car stores was 69%, compared to 39% at competing dealerships in the same markets. Why are buyers paying thousands more for the same Ram truck from Carvana, and how is Carvana outselling the competition?
Well, there's two questions there. Number one, we don't actually know that is what we assume. That's what customers pay, because Carvana's stores have no haggle policies, right? So that's the price they put on it. We presume that's the price that somebody paid. We don't actually have the transaction data, though. We should point that out. This was a fascinating story that our colleague Paige Hodder did this week, talking about these Carvana stores, which they've been the talk of the auto retail industry since they came online. And if you guys recall, I picked this as my biggest story of the year, right? It is fascinating. And what I think it says, and what dealers ought to be paying attention to, is that people are willing to pay a little bit more, against their own economic advantage, to escape the dealership process. They want frictionless purchasing. They want to decide. They don't want the hard sell for the F&I products, even though they can still get those F&I products at the Carvana store. They don't want the hard sell. They don't, for whatever reason. And the important thing is that these stores are putting up some big numbers, really, really big new vehicle sales numbers. So I think what this says is that everybody in the auto retailing sector needs to take a look at the mirror and take a look at their own processes and see whether, how you're treating your customers. Are you treating them like profit centers, where you're trying to squeeze every last dime out of them? Or are you trying to get them to come back? Because I think what we're going to see over the long haul with Carvana is that what's really going to be the telling point is to see what the return rate is. Are people going to come back and buy subsequent vehicles from these stores? I think right now we're certainly in a beta phase. And I think, you guys would agree. It's early days. People are curious. It is a different process, especially for buying a new car. We're gonna have to see if it works. The really big tell is going to be if those folks come back and buy a second car, a second new vehicle, 2, 3, 4 years from now. And if they are, and those stores numbers continue to rise, I think this whole, regardless of brand, you're going to see some major movement in how automotive retailing is done.
I think it's inevitable, Larry. I mean, as someone that bought my car on a phone app and then had it delivered to me, I don't think I could ever go back to going into a traditional dealership experience. I could see it kind of making that shift.
And I think it's tough to quantify the car buying public, in just one monolith, right? There are all kinds and all types. There are those folks, sickos like me that love to negotiate. There are folks that do not want any of the stress, don't want any of the challenge of trying to get a better deal, would rather pay the money and just be done with it. And so we can't qualify everybody. And I think there's going to be room overall for everybody. But yeah, you're right. This, especially as people age out and the, younger customers come in, and they are fully accustomed to buying things over the phone, no matter the size of those items and the cost of those items. So I think generationally, if I had to put a long-term bet, I would probably put it on the Carvana model, outlasting everybody else. And, that's something that automakers and dealers across this industry are going to have to wake up to.
Just a quick example. Think about this real quick, guys. Just follow me here.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you use, let's say, like DoorDash or like Uber Eats? Right? Do you use it?
Zero times.
Yeah, you're old school, Larry. But Mike, you use it, right?
Too often.
Yeah, right. And when you look at your receipt, how much you're paying to have it delivered to you, where your $20 meal has now turned into a $42 meal, just off the simple fact that you're being charged extra fees because you don't want to actually get up and go to the restaurant and go pick it up yourself, right?
Yeah, it hurts.
Right, but you're willing to make that sacrifice for comfort. I feel like that's the same thing with the dealership situation.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I will say, I'll speak on behalf of my entire generation, which is Generation X, by the way. No damn way are we paying for that.
Right. Now, Mike, Ford and its dealers have a long and complicated relationship. And here you have a non-traditional competitor proving that customers will pay a premium to skip the traditional dealership experience. What does that say about where franchise dealers stand?
I'm going to keep this short because Larry basically said everything in a really smart way about what this story means. And I think this should be a 5-alarm blaring warning signal to any traditional dealer that, again, people are willing to pay more because they do not like how you do business. And to be fair, you mentioned Ford and the complicated relationship, particularly when Ford tried to force the EV requirements on the dealers. And I think they lost the goodness in that plan. Jim Farley saw this to some extent, not Carvana specifically, but he saw that the dealership experience needed to change. And as part of those requirements, he wanted to sort of shift what a Ford dealer selling EVs looked like and how they acted. Now, that all got buried under the massive price tag that the dealers didn't want to have to shoulder. And that's all well and good and fair. That's why that program failed. But yeah, some folks have seen the writing on the wall here, and Carvana's proving it. As Larry said, I don't know. And as you pointed out, Cal, I don't know in the future how you can just keep it status quo, keep it business as usual when you know that's not what the people want. You're going to have to see some changes in terms of the franchise model here.
The big tell here is not going to be the numbers that Carvana keeps putting up. The big tell is going to be when a second brand allows them to buy. When somebody like, I'm thinking specifically of Volkswagen. I'm thinking of Nissan. Some folks that have had some recent struggles those dealers have had some recent struggles. And I think you've got dealers in those brands who are willing to sell. And I think Carvana is willing to try with a second brand. It'll be very, very interesting to see who jumps second.
All right, guys, and I want to make sure we get to this last one before I let you guys go, because this is wild. So BMW pushed a Spider-Man movie promotion onto the dashboard screens in its vehicles for more than 70 countries for 2 weeks. A banner would pop up when you turned your car on, click it, and you got a full screen animation with music and ambient lighting. Now, owners on Reddit were not amused. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is my fear. This has been my fear since we have seen over the past decade the rise of in-vehicle connectivity and larger screens and all this technology inside your car. It can be super useful, but will these automakers use that power for good or evil? I'm being a little hyperbolic here, but I do not want a future where my car knows my driving habits, knows that I passed by a McDonald's and a Starbucks on my way to work, and then serves me up advertisements and coupons for Big Macs as I'm driving into work. I do not want to pay, just like a lot of posters have complained online, a certain amount for a car and still be subject to advertisements. These automakers need to look in the mirror and recognize that whatever small, relatively speaking, marketing dollars they are getting from partnerships like this are not worth angering their customer base. And by the way, BMW's answer to this, completely tone deaf. It is an ad. And if you read some of the reporting out here that reached out to BMW for comment, there's one story that says they declined further comment because their expert on the matter was on vacation. It just completely tone deaf, awful situation. It is an ad, and that ad is awful.
So I'm just going to say two things. I'm going to paraphrase what Mike is saying, which is what the automakers need to learn is that with great power comes great responsibility.
Ooh.
Deep cut, deep Spider-Man cut. And number two, because this was BMW, that ad would have been far more effective if they had just said, hey, remember to use your turn signals.
Oh, man. BMW drivers are always the butt of all the automotive jokes. Larry, Mike, you guys are always great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kel.
Thanks, Kel. Have a good weekend.
That's all for this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Paige Hodder for her reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Nathan Eddy of our sibling publication, Automotive News Europe. You can get the latest news on Ford's product pipeline, Carvana's push into new car retail, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.